And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PSBTA Technical Solutions webinar series. My name is Martha Ellis, and I am the Executive Director of the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, or the PSBTA. As an association, our primary objective is to work as a broadband end user advocate for first responders and service providers. We've heard a lot over the last few years about FirstNet, but less familiar to folks is that in 2002, the FCC allocated 50 megahertz of the 4.9 GHz spectrum to public safety, which stands separate and apart from our nationwide public safety network. Over the past years, that spectrum has been in jeopardy of being reallocated for commercial use. Because of that, the PSBTA has sponsored the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance, or the PSSA, to fight on your behalf to keep that spectrum for public safety use only. As the effort progresses, we'd like to bring everyone up to speed on current developments regarding public safety's 4.9 spectrum. The work that we have done demonstrates how critical it is for first responders to stay informed and, when needed, engage in standing up for the preservation of our resources. Before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items that we need to go over. All attendees have been automatically muted to reduce background noise. Any questions should be submitted directly to us through the questions function, which is located at the bottom of the menu on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of our panel discussion, and we will attempt to answer as many questions as we possibly can while we're live, and then follow up with those that we don't get to. An email address will also be provided, so if you have additional questions after we have concluded our webinar, you can send them to us directly. What we would like to do today is clarify the significance of the proposed change in use to the 4.9 spectrum and how the PSSA is taking a stand against those changes. We'll also broaden the understanding of why 4.9 spectrum is so significant to first responders. Joining us today are two of our PSSA members, retired fire chief and former FirstNet board vice chair, Jeff Johnson, and Sue Swenson, who is a former FirstNet board chair. Welcome to you both, and thank you for being with us today. As I turn the time over to each of you, if you would take a moment to briefly introduce yourselves and speak to your interest in spectrum preservation for first responders, that would be phenomenal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chief Johnson, to get us started with our webinar status briefing, PSSA's ongoing efforts to secure the 4.9 spectrum for public safety.
Thank you, Martha. Sue, good morning, and welcome to our webcam attendees. It's nice to have you here today. Well, I think, so Martha asked me to introduce myself. I'm Jeff Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the Western Fire Chiefs. I've had that position for 13 years, following a 32-year fire service career, of which I did 15 years as the Chief Fire Officer in charge of one of the largest departments in the country, one of the 100 largest departments in the country, and then was active with a small group of people on Capitol Hill to bring us FirstNet, work in the legislature to convince Congress that this was good for public safety, and then had the pleasure of serving as Sue Swenson's vice chairman on the FirstNet board. We saw it from its first scrap of paper to an operable network before Sue and I wrapped up our service to FirstNet, and since we've joined the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance to continue to watchdog for and with public safety's interests in securing adequate spectrum and frankly, policy on a broader context that serves public safety's needs. Maybe where I'll start today is just to look back a little bit, because you can take something like 4.9 spectrum and it's rather oblique in terms of what it is and why it matters. So I'll go back in time. Following 9/11 in 2002, Congress awarded public safety 50 megahertz of 4.9 spectrum. That's the spectrum we're talking about. So Congress awarded that to public safety. And it's been in public safety's control since then, up until during the last FCC administration, that there was a process, and that spectrum was taken from public safety and allocated to other non-public safety uses. The public safety community reacted to that taking, and we asked for a stay, and we asked for the FCC to reconsider that decision. Those, we received favorable rulings on that. And as such, we now have it back in public safety's hands. And so now what do you do with it? So the FCC is currently conducting a process where they're listening to what we think needs to happen with it. And of course, anyone that has an opinion on the matter is welcome to file within the FCC's process and be heard. And it's not surprising that the public safety community has opinions on it. Not everybody is in 100% agreement, but I think to the 90th percentile, we're in agreement that we need to continue to watch out for public safety's interests. And that's the conversation going on right now. So what is 4.9? Well, amongst other things, this 50 megahertz swath represents an opportunity to have mid-band 5G spectrum added to our portfolio for public safety. It potentially holds a solution for in-building coverage, which is if you don't have in-building, so much of police, firefighter, and EMT's job is done in-building. It's great to have something that's as capable as this 4.9 spectrum for in-building uses. And, you know, this creates an opportunity for us to do that. So between those two uses and the fact that it is public safety spectrum, you know, we want to see this deployed to the benefit of public safety. And what it's not, here's what it's not. We're trying not to go back to how I spent the first 40 years of my career. And how I spent the first 40 years of my career is every community has a disparate public safety communications network. That's fine, but you can't scale a broadband offering like that. One of the magic bullets to FirstNet was that we created scale. And I think Sue hopefully will talk about the device ecosystem. Like when you quit having every town, if we went back and we undid this and we went back to the way it was, then Portland would have a system and Vancouver, Washington would have a different system and Salem, Oregon would have a different system, and on you go. And it's different technologies, different vendors, and all of us that run budgets for public safety agency, we write a lot of big checks to solve interoperability. And then when you get deployed to California on a wildfire, everything's different there and it doesn't work. But we had to move past that place. Mm-hmm. If 3 or 4 wireless carriers in the United States made sense commercially, then it could make sense for public safety. Let's get one technological approach. Let's serve public safety in a predictable nationwide fashion, and let's move to a place public safety hasn't been. And part of that recipe is public safety has to say, this is what public safety needs. The early part of my career, we were spent with vendors telling us what we needed. And we never found our voice in that until the last 15 years or so. So, you know, part of the motivation is to keep the technology ubiquitous and the same nationwide. Part of it is to solve it on a greater scale and a greater picture, with public safety preeminent in people's minds about how we go through that. And then there's a recognition that maybe it's not entirely fair, but it is definitely true. We have to remember that public safety's voice on our spectrum is critical. Mm-hmm. And it's critical because we are the ones that need to have a control over what technologies and spectrum that we use in public safety, because regardless of the corporation, any company has an obligation to give their shareholders a fair return on their investment. That's their fiduciary. There is no fiduciary to public safety unless you have a contractual obligation that ties your company to public safety's needs. So I just out of habit default to making sure that we're watching out for public safety's interests. I don't believe that any company that isn't contractually bound has an obligation to serve our interests. They may have a commercial reason to solve our problems and to help public safety. They don't have a duty and a fiduciary to public safety unless you have a contract to do so. So we tend to default to public safety's voice, and we tend to default to anybody that has a contractual obligation to serve public safety's needs. And that's where we tend to go down. And I think right now I'll gladly defer to our adopted public safety person, Sue Swenson, who's ran about everything in telecommunications there is to run. And frankly, we owe Sue a thank you and a debt of gratitude for her leadership that completed the FirstNet mission. We absolutely couldn't have done it without her. Sue?
Chief Johnson, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. And for those of you who don't know me, I spent most of my career in telecommunications, both on the wireline and wireless side, and worked with a number of companies. But I have to tell you that the most rewarding experience was working on the FirstNet project. It's an honor to be adopted by the public safety community, and I'll talk a little bit about the experience of joining the board was quite eye-opening for me. Obviously, having spent my time in the commercial service, I frankly was a little shocked when I joined the board to find out where public safety was when you think of what we expect of public safety. So I spent the next 6 years along with Chief Johnson to make sure that that didn't happen. And essentially what we're talking about today is to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's very important that our first responders have all the technology that they need to do their job, and we feel really responsible for that. So I'm going to start off today with really a quote that's in the filing from the FCC, and the quote is, "The goal of the FCC is to create a consistent nationwide framework for the 4.9 GHz band that fosters efficient use of this important mid-band spectrum." And I will just tell you that the PSSA could not agree more with this statement. I mean, it kind of says it all. And particularly the emphasis on implementing a nationwide framework and preserving the integrity and priority for public safety communications. And that really should be the primary driver. You all, and Jeff mentioned it, public safety has had this spectrum since 2002, the 50 megahertz, and thousands of agencies today have been using it since that time in a variety of ways. It's underutilized, we know that, but we think we have a plan that deals with that, much like the utilization of the band 14 that's used today for public safety. It's used in many, for many uses as well. But we need to make sure that these agencies that have been using this since 2002 are protected as well, and that we put in place an appropriate framework to enable the full utilization of the spectrum in an efficient and effective way. You all remember that the nationwide public safety broadband network went operational in the beginning of 2018. That was after 6 years of work on the part of the FirstNet Authority. Did a great job going out and talking to all states, territories, Commonwealth to find out what public safety wanted. This was not a commercial network. Public safety had it with, I think, Jeff, with the commercial networks. And so it was our job over a couple of years, and Chief Johnson actually started that effort to go out and start talking to everybody in every state to find out what they wanted. And just to bring you all up to date, it was just announced recently, I think it's been a pretty good success for a public-private partnership. It's close to 5 million connections. Over 25,000 public safety agencies and organizations are utilizing it today. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary, particularly since it's voluntary, it's not mandatory. And I think one of the most important things, Jeff, that we spent time on when we were putting together the RFP was coverage. When we talked with every state and territory, the big issue was we need coverage not only in urban and suburban areas, but we need it in rural as well. And so when you look at where coverage is today, the FirstNet coverage is about 2.9 million square miles, and that's about 250,000 square miles more than the commercial networks, which is, as you know, Jeff, what we really wanted focused in. And obviously that work continues, and so that work is not completely done. We talked, you mentioned the device ecosystem. What was interesting at the beginning of this is that people said, no one's going to make devices for public safety. I mean, it's such a, there's just not that opportunity there. Some of you may not know that there are about 590, Jeff, 590 FirstNet ready devices. Did you ever think for a moment that we'd have 590 devices? And so I think that's quite extraordinary that we've reached that number. Another key asset, something that we talked about, was the ability to respond in emergencies. Obviously, you have situations, whether it's weather or or incidents that require additional support, and the nationwide public safety broadband network has assets in cell on wheels, flying cell on wheels, compact deployables, and not only do we have about 150 of those assets nationwide, but there also is an operational design that gets those assets to the incident in a timely fashion. And Jeff, you were pretty instrumental in that, I think, because I think it's really designed around, I think, some work that you did to make sure that they understood where those assets should be placed so that they could get to the incident in a timely fashion. So it's not only the fact that the assets exist, that they need to get to the incident in time. And finally, I think this was something that we didn't even envision, but I think is having a huge impact and is becoming increasingly important, is that the program has about 30 therapy animals, which becomes, for those of you who are involved in public safety, you know how important that is. That's not an easy job, and there's lots of challenges. And I think those therapy animals, Jeff, are having a huge impact on the people who are having to deal with these incidents. The only thing is that the incredible growth has been possible only because of a nationwide framework that established the full nationwide framework in the 700 megahertz band. And it enabled, as you said, Jeff, the proliferation of mobile devices, new technologies, and in addition, ensuring the integrity of the public safety communication. It also is important that it also has communication with automated security, which is important for public safety, some more than others, priority and preemption, and all managed through a dedicated centralized core network. So those are all elements that people have to remember that makes this successful. It can't be one of the things or one of the other things. It's a combination of things and a program that puts this all together. So, we are highly appreciative of the effort that the FCC has taken in the 9th further notice, but we think that several of the details as proposed, if implemented in the manner suggested, won't necessarily accomplish the Commission's goals. So I'd like to cover just 5 quick key points regarding our view, Jeff, and make sure that people understand why PSSA is taking this, and you can certainly comment. So number 1 is, rather than continue exclusively with local licensing, we think that the Commission should issue a single nationwide overlay license to an appropriately identified entity that has the expertise necessary to deliver services to first responders. That's really a key component. The approach that's in the order, that's in the notice, still has it pretty fragmented, and so you're not going to get economies of scale. So we really think that nationwide, the nationwide overlay license is really critical. Number 2, a band manager should be selected to work in conjunction with the nationwide licensee to provide the necessary technical expertise and day-to-day management. So a little bit different approach than what the Commission has put out there, but we think that's really critical. Number 3, the new framework should require one single nationwide core dedicated to public safety, or a similar approach that would automatically apply priority and preemption to all 4.9 band traffic. And the reason we think that's important is that, you notice I use the word automatic. I don't think public safety can wait for people to do manual intervention and do it, reactively. It's got to be proactive, and it has to be automatic. So I know that there's been a lot of comments about other technologies and other bands, and don't get us wrong, we believe that technology will mature and someday we'll actually do that. But today we think it's really important that it's automatic and not done on a reactive basis. Number 4, the 4.9 gigahertz band must also be fully operable with the PSBN. So obviously, with public safety using that band, that integration is really critically important to ensure seamless and automatic priority for mission critical operations. So that is really an important point. And the last point is to protect existing, and I talked about at the beginning, but to protect existing point-to-point and geographic licenses we think they should be converted to site-specific authorizations to operate for incumbents and limited to services in use by such incumbents today. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't, through the band manager, consider additional use, but we think that's something that would come through the band manager. So those are really, Jeff, I just wanted to cover kind of the key elements of the PSSA position and why it's so important. And had we not had the success of FirstNet, we probably wouldn't be quite so adamant about this, but having had the success of FirstNet and seeing the things that worked, we thought it was very appropriate to take that position. So, you know, we've certainly closed the gap that we had that existed before, and we'd like to continue to do the same. I do not, during my lifetime, Jeff, ever again want to see public safety lagging commercial capability. It was almost an embarrassment for me as a commercial provider to come in and think that, you know, what we expect of all the first responders across the nation, that they should be walking around with voice only, no data. You know, it was mind numbing. And so I think we have an obligation to make sure that public safety never ever lags technologically again. So with that, I don't know if you have any additional comments. Otherwise, I think we can turn it to Martha.
Just a couple, Sue. Number one, I know you were professionally embarrassed by where public safety was, but honestly, wasn't your job. You know, and that's kind of why I feel so strongly about corporations. They have a fiduciary to their shareholders. They don't have a fiduciary to public safety unless they have a contractual bind.
Right.
So to me, it isn't their job to watch out for us. And there's really only two types of people in this space. Those who are subject to a contract that they signed, that the board at FirstNet holds them accountable to, and the benchmarks that they're committed to doing. There's that, which AT&T won that right. There's that, and then people that talk about public safety because they don't have a contract to perform. They don't have an oversight board that governs that. They don't have benchmarks. God help them, we need them. They can be in business today to serve public safety, and they can be out of business next week. It's just the decision that happens out here. That if you signed a 25-year contract like AT&T did, they're not leaving, and they're not escaping the accountability that we built into that contract. So to me, it like makes complete sense that we would have a preference to someone that's contractually bound to us than someone that can come and go with the wind. But like I said, they are necessary. We need them, but there's only one that is contracted to perform under the National Public Safety Broadband Network. Only one.
That's right.
So to me, it's what the things we're advocating for are completely consistent with our insistence on a nationwide approach, not going backwards to this broken up model. We're committed to protecting incumbents, and it's like we have a track record here. We have a track record of clearing the 700 megahertz channels for FirstNet, and we protected the incumbent. So I think we go right back to that. To your point on the device ecosystem, Sonam Technologies and their CEO, Bob Plaschke, was the first company to step forward and said, we'll put it in our devices. Now, hundreds and hundreds of devices have FirstNet in there. Why? Because we created enough scale that drove the market to this place and people had to go there. We've also, I think why what we're talking about makes sense too, is it leverages a proven successful model. Like we're approaching 5 million subscriber connections on the FirstNet network. That's in 6 years. This didn't operationalize till 6 years ago. That's, you know, it's not a stretch to say heading toward 1 million people a year moving to FirstNet. So is it perfect? No. But 5 million public safety responders can't be that wrong. And I think that's a credit to what's been built. And I think the bottom line is, as long as we stay focused on public safety, we'll solve public safety problems. And in buildings, one of those opportunities we have. So with that, Sue, I'll defer to our moderator, Martha.
Martha.
All right, fabulous. Sue, I can't tell you how much I appreciated that perspective. First responders, we are very first responder centric. So everything that we do, we take with great heart and a great fervor when we attack a problem. And sometimes it's easy to forget that the rest of the world doesn't view things the way that we do. And so for you to come in and become such an amazing voice for the complete opposite end of the spectrum of this industry is really quite remarkable. And you continue to do tremendous work for us. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. So a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't understand why we're having to work to get the spectrum back to public safety when it was allocated to public safety in 2002. Would one of you like to explain how that happened?
Well, Chief Johnson, you mentioned it a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit about kind of what happened there.
Well, listen, I think for some reasons that are our fault and some that are not, public safety did not fully utilize the 4.9 spectrum while we had it. So it left open the argument that you aren't using it and someone needs to, and, right? I mean, it can be that simple. And within our system, if you have an idea to more efficiently use a federal resource, then there's venues within which you get to make that argument. That's what happened.
Right.
But what was missing from that use case? What was missing from that is 4.9 is ideal mid-band spectrum for 5G. Well, we didn't have 5G needs 6 years ago. So public safety was looking at it. We were saying, oh, that's our spectrum. We have a quickly approaching use for it, and then bang, we had a decision that removed that spectrum from our hands. So that was that. And I think public safety's voice in spectrum use prior to FirstNet was largely focused on land mobile radio spectrum. And it wasn't kind of this massive need that I think you see in terms of throughput and everything else. Some people like Harlan McEwen and others, they saw this coming before most of us did. And, they readied us for this discussion. And I think gone are the days where public safety just sits back and lets this critical public safety resource get out of our hands and out of our use case. So I think that's what happened. Sue, what would you add?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think it was totally appropriate to talk about the underutilization. It was really just, when that decision was made to return it in 2020, I don't feel that public safety had an opportunity to have much of an input about that. I don't know that we would have had to go through, maybe, Jeff, the process that we did had public safety had an opportunity to. So that's what we're doing right now. And it was very appropriate to have this kind of discussion because you don't ever want to have underutilized spectrum. So I think we're in a good place. The FCC now is doing exactly what it needs to do and getting input from all parties who are concerned. And, we'll come out with the best outcome for everybody concerned. I think the FCC is doing exactly what it needs to do.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Right. Perfect. So one of the concerns that's come up in the questions pane is regarding the current user. So how will agencies that are currently using the 4.9 gigahertz spectrum be protected, however this turns out, whatever the outcome is?
Well, if we take from our lessons in clearing the 700 band, what we said was, if you're currently operating there, we will guarantee that you're going to stay there, or that you get moved at our expense to a like and superior, equal to or better than solution. So that's why we cleared that without problem. So incumbent users, our proposal to the FCC is that we protect them with an equal to or better than solution, or they continue to use what they're using.
And I would just add to that, Jeff, that in addition to what they're currently using, like I said, that we would, along with the proposal is with the band manager, consider requests to grant current users expanded operational authority. So not limit them to what they currently have, but to also, because as they continue to find different ways to use it, we want to find ways to work with them so that they can expand their use in it. So not only protect what they have, but also work with them for future needs as well.
Great. Okay, so the commercial interest clearly is a factor in all of this. So can we speak a little bit about why there seems to be such a commercial interest in this and the perception of spectrum being so limited that they have to come after this particular spectrum? Would one of you like to speak about why there is such a robust interest in this from the commercial side of the house?
Well, I'll let Sue, if she would, speak to the value of spectrum, but I think, or the scarcity of spectrum, but to me, listen, if you don't live this world, you probably don't know it, but spectrum, like real estate, is a thing. It's a principle of physics, and it's valuable. So the reality is, if I'm a corporation and I want access to spectrum, there's only two ways to get it: buy it, or get it somehow, right? Legislatively, administratively, but get access to it. So it wouldn't surprise me if a company's motivated to try to get it without paying for it. But you know, I'm just a public safety guy. It's this simple. If I'm a business and I have a business case to make money from spectrum, then that business case should contemplate paying for it, because businesses can raise capital. They can raise funds in the private market to buy spectrum. Public safety can't. That's why Congress gave public safety the spectrum, because public safety as a nation, what am I going to mail in $50 and somebody else mails in $50? We buy our own spectrum and compete with the big wireless carriers? It's not practical. The federal government saw its way through in 2002 to allocate this to public safety, because public safety cannot buy it. Corporations can buy it and should buy it. So unless you're going to serve a public safety interest and you're willing to bet your company on it and sign a contract, then you should write a check for access to the spectrum, in this humble fire chief's opinion. But I'm sure Sue can illuminate us about what it's like to be on the other side.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, you know, and all the people that I've ever worked for, the people that I've worked for have always said, you always want more spectrum. You know, I mean, as a commercial entity, you want to get as much spectrum as you possibly can. And I think the FCC has done a pretty good job of making spectrum available to a lot of commercial interests and continuing to do that. I think they have some challenges right now in terms of doing that, but I know they're trying to work through that. But, you know, commercial interests always want more spectrum. But as Jeff said, as a country, I think we should understand, whether you're commercial or not, that we have an obligation to give to public safety what they need to do the job that we expect for them to do for us. And I think this is a particular situation where we have that. And again, I don't want to be, during my lifetime, seeing public safety get behind technologically. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for commercial entities to get spectrum in all the auctions that the FCC is conducting.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know, Martha,
Okay.
just one last thought on that. You know, I try never to confuse my fiduciary here, right? I am a fire chief by trade, and I run a trade association that serves chief officers in the West, right? I am not an FCC commissioner. So our obligation as public safety is to speak and be heard and let our opinion about what we think is best for public safety be known. That doesn't mean we have all the answers. It doesn't mean I'm 100% right all the time. It means I have an obligation to inform the chairwoman and our commissioners about what we believe public safety needs. And that's what PSBTA exists for. We exist to represent the voices of our users, who are, by definition of law, public safety. So we exist to say, here's how we think it should be used. And I have tremendous confidence that the FCC will use their good judgment to put all this into balance, and then we'll fulfill our fiduciary. And I'm completely unapologetic about not representing other people's needs or interests. Public safety, there we go. And I think it has to be that way. It's the commissioner's job to balance that.
Right.
Absolutely. So a point of clarification, a question just came in, and based on the question, I'm sensing that there might be a little bit of confusion. So let me read this question exactly the way it was sent in, and you all can take it from there. If the band is pulled from FirstNet, would the cell towers built by the FirstNet Authority be able to transition over to the new band assigned to first responders? So I'm getting a feeling like somebody's thinking that this is a zero-sum game. So maybe you could explain that there's still a difference there.
Sue, help me out here, but if I remember correctly, that the current contract holder, AT&T, when the contract is over at 25 years, right? When that contract expires in 25 years, I think they have 19 years left, if I remember correctly. That infrastructure that's been built is public safety's investment. If AT&T bids on it again and re-wins it, well, they're still in the game. It could be another carrier next time, Sue. And I think that investment transfers to the new winner, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah,
Sue,
the contract would be.
Let me just, my interpretation of this question, it almost sounds like this listener is under the impression that the 4.9 is somehow related to FirstNet. It's saying if the band is pulled from FirstNet. So I'm just wondering if this is a first. Maybe we should move on, because I don't know if this is necessarily
FirstNet. So that's
yeah,
is public safety, and the FCC will adjudicate how it's used in the future.
Yeah,
so,
two separate entities.
And Mark, if we have other questions, we can always respond to them. We have a list of the participants. We can take those questions and try to elaborate. And obviously, they can contact, PSBTA, for further discussion as well.
Yep, absolutely. One other question that did come in: is this going to be recorded? Yes, you will all be receiving an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. So, and I think everything else we'll just have to respond to via email directly to you folks that have sent a couple more questions in. We are going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. So we realize that first responders have a lot on their minds and plenty to prepare for, and worrying about the expanding needs for broadband spectrum should not be a point of concern. And that is why the PSBTA and the PSSA is working so hard on your behalf. Do either of you have any closing comments that you'd like to share before we close the webinar?
I'd like to thank you and the PSBTA for hosting this, creating a forum for conversation, and I'd like to thank the attendees for joining us today.
Yeah, same, ditto.
Okay, great. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed the webinar today and felt like it was time well spent. Again, we are the Public Safety Broadband Technology Association, and we want to be your advocate for all aspects of broadband utilization. By being here today, you help support our efforts to continually bring you cutting-edge information about the current and developing matters specific to your broadband interests. We will be doing another 4.9 briefing on May 4th at 10:30 Pacific time. So please share this information with anyone that you think might be interested in this topic, and you'll be able to find that information on the PSBTA website, and we'll also be sending out notification emails to everybody. So if you have any additional questions on today's topic, please email us at info@thepsbta.org. And for any other information on the PSBTA in general, just visit our website at thepsbta.org. This concludes our webinar, Status Briefing PSSA, Ongoing Efforts to Secure 4.9 GHz for Public Safety. Thank you, and again, we appreciate your time.